All right, good evening. I'm Peter Pingator, I'm the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. This is our notice meeting for Wednesday, December 14th, 2022 at 7 p.m. We are appearing in the Highland Room. The notice posted with the clerk states Powers Hall. We have put placards on the doors of Powers Hall. If anyone from the public appears up there, they can be directed by those placards down to this room. This is a meeting that we're meeting in hybrid, so it's the public has access to it through our Zoom address, which is also posted as part of our notice. So as we have been doing for the last almost 3 years, we will have some people participating remotely, and we are meeting remotely in a hybrid format pursuant to the governor's emergency orders concerning the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, and determining that the order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely or in this hybrid format, so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberation of the meeting. And it has been determined that this hybrid format, with the public having access to our Zoom address, is compliant with our obligation to have open meeting. Let me start by taking roll call, which allows us to do a tech check to make sure that you can hear me and I can hear you. And I'll call your name, and if you respond in the affirmative, we will go from there. Joe Barnes.
Here.
Bob Dermody.
Here.
Laura Dorfman.
Here.
Reg Foster.
Here.
Dina Hannigan is not present tonight. Okay. Dave Herrer.
Here.
Jean McKnight.
Here.
Rick Zimbo.
Here.
And chair is present. Peter Pingator present. Our staff, Cecilia Simchuk.
Here.
All right. Now, I noted that we are convening by Zoom app and also in person. Just be aware that people may see your screen, so don't just share your screens. We're being recorded, so anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All the meeting material should have been provided to you in advance of this meeting, unless otherwise noted by me, chair. And we'll proceed with our usual ground rules. I'll introduce the subject or the speaker, and then we'll have each member of the committee speak or ask questions regarding the subject matter. And just, we want to confirm for the record who you are that's speaking, either by me just calling on you by name or you stating your name before you speak. And each vote will be by roll call vote. Okay. So with that, let's start with our meeting agenda. Chairman's updates. I guess the sole update is that I've heard by Gmail from Susan Welby, who we had designated as our representative for the Active Recreation Assets Working Group. And Susan has informed me that she received our appointment. She took the oath at the clerk's office. She's working right now with her ethics obligation for the online course. And she expressed appreciation that we have recommended her for the position. So do we have that email up there? Because then
Yes.
I just want to let you know what if you look at the second paragraph, which is the reference to David mentioned, and I'll just bring your David being David Kerr, her husband, that it was suggested that when we appointed her, that she comes to the CPC meeting. You can read along. She said that she's happy to appear before us, and then she gives us some assurances right there. She intends to keep us informed of all activities of the committee and look to the committee for guidance if asked for CPC input to any recommendations that the committee might make to the select board. And she informs us that no meetings have been scheduled to date, and she will let us know when the committee starts to meet. I've been in communication with her and asked Susan to meet with us just briefly at our next regularly scheduled meeting so that we can ask her any questions that we may have of her, and we can ask her to make any other assurances that we may want from her. But I think that we're off to a good start. So that's what I propose, is have Susan come by just for a short meeting for a meet and greet and at our next meeting.
So I don't remember this appointment. I know Susan Welby, and she's a wonderful person to have appointed. But what is the Active Recreation Assets Working Group?
So it's a group. Documents in front of me, but it's stretching my memory. But it's the select board created a working group with representatives from various committees, including Park and Rec, CPC, I think.
I have
Conservation
it
Commission.
here.
Okay, and so it's a relatively short-lived committee that's going to go for maybe 90, 120 days and make recommendations about what we should be doing in the short term with respect to active recreation, like, skateboard park, pickleball, etc.
Oh, on the idea, not so much on what kind of maintenance and upgrades do our facilities need, but are there new programs we should be offering? Is that the idea?
Let's go right to the
Yeah.
text.
It says, will serve in an advisory capacity to guide the town in space planning for the future of active recreational opportunities in Needham. The working group will evaluate existing town-owned assets, identify assets for potential future acquisition, identify unmet needs for active recreation, and review space requirements for each. Looking at for public input with regards to action sports parks, pickleball, tennis, basketball, Charles River access, off-leash dog areas. See where we have any unmet needs, inventory the existing opportunities, and provide some guidance. And it has 2 select board members, 2 Park and Rec Commission members, someone from the Conservation Commission, someone from the school committee, someone from the finance committee, someone from us, and then a community member.
Okay.
And so at our prior meeting, Jean, we discussed the issue. We were under some time pressure from the select board and because they wanted to move this committee quickly. And so when we last met, we had a discussion about whether or not anyone on the committee wanted to participate, or we could appoint a representative.
Got it.
And Susan Welby communicated through Dave Herrer that she was interested.
It may be that I had a conflict and wasn't able to participate in our last meeting, so I must
just
have
can't,
missed that.
offhand, I just
So,
can't recall.
okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you did. You did.
Um,
Okay, so you actually did. That's right. And that was one of the key items in our meeting. Okay. All right. So any questions regarding that communication from Susan?
I have a question.
Sure.
It's
Susan,
Laura
that's
Dorfman.
Laura Dorfman.
Laura Dorfman. So the appointments to our committee, is there some sort of charter or something that dictates which committee people should be on the CPC, and if a new committee pops up, the select board, I'm assuming they have the purview to say, we want this person on the CPC, like how, I'm just wondering how that works.
So it actually works. In this instance, it worked exactly the way it worked in connection with our appointment last month, which was that there was a request that either a member of the CPC or a representative appointed by the CPC participate in this committee. So it was a request from the select board.
Oh, so it's the reverse, really?
Well, they made a request. They
Yeah.
created a committee.
Yeah.
Stated that there was a seat at the table, if you will, for a
Okay.
representative from CPC. And so from there, we made an appointment based on our discussion. You were there. You were in the.
I was there. Yeah, I guess I didn't understand I understand. So after that, then we made the request for this appointment to our committee.
We made the appointment.
Right. Okay,
We made the appointment by motion in our last meeting.
okay. I guess I just wasn't sure about where this came from, but now I'm clear. Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Peter,
All right, so just state your name.
Peter Trixenbaum. Sorry.
Take that email down.
Yeah.
Good, thanks, Rick.
Let me take my hand down. Just a little bit, from what I understand, is a little more background to this. Apparently, the Park and Rec has received numerous citizen requests for various activities around town. Some people, as Peter mentioned, wanted a skateboard park. Others wanted additional playground space. Others wanted paddleball or pickleball or whatever that sport now is that people are all hyped up about. And they needed to set up this committee to get to the bottom of it and come back with recommendations for both the select board and the Park and Rec committee for commission for what they should be prioritizing as far as outdoor activities. And I think we're included in this primarily because there's going to be a request for funding down the road from us for some of these activities. If somebody wants to build a skate park, then they're probably going to come to us looking for funds to support that. So just as a little bit of fill in, if that helps satisfy some curiosity.
All right, thanks, Rick. That's really helpful, actually. It kind of answers a little bit of the why question. And so, and that's good. It's good information and good insight. So thank you. All right,
I have a question about it.
All right, Jean
We're-
McKnight.
We're working on our community preservation plan.
Correct.
Will the work of this committee inform that plan, or, that might set the timing off on the plan? Is there any interaction?
So that's an excellent question. And I think that when we have a discussion about that CPA plan, I think what we're going to find is that the deadline for actually getting a final draft of an amended plan is probably going to be extended into the first part of 2023.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I think that these priorities, if we look at what are, if that working group actually comes up with a plan about what their priorities are, well, that could fall under their statement of needs.
Yeah.
And resources, recreational resources and the statement of needs and the recreational goals. You're
Yes.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
So that information will inform those amended sections, hopefully, to the CPA plan. Another very insightful question / comment. Okay. Any other comments? Dave Harris.
I got something related. One of the submissions for funding was the tot lot at the Fazio. And that may be one of the properties that's under consideration for an alternative use with this committee that's being formed. And so, I'm just wondering how that might be handled.
Okay, so I think that that's an excellent question to be included in your due diligence questions, to be directed to the applicant. So I make sure you put that down in writing. Okay, so you're new to this, but you're gonna have an opportunity as an individual member to put together your own questions for each of these applications. In fact, we're gonna discuss a deadline for that. We have kind of forms that we put together
Right.
and general questions that we want everyone to answer. But then there's an individualized approach that we want, and we ask each of our members to actually think about and put together in writing additional due diligence questions. So that's an excellent question. Okay, make sure you write that down.
Excuse me. I feel as though I should know you. You're new on a committee. Please tell me your name.
Dave Harrer.
Dave Herrick.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. And I'm Jean McKnight.
Yeah, you know my wife, Susan.
Oh, yes, yes.
So
I-
that's my
Thank you.
claim to
Gene, I
fame.
apologize. I just forgot that you hadn't been here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm on the Conservation Commission.
Oh,
and,
oh.
he is the
Conservation.
new Conservation Commission representative.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, his first contribution was to bring us Susan Welby.
Well played.
Nicely done,
So to speak.
All right, okay. Those are good questions and comments. Anything else? All right, let's move on. Well, the next item is election of committee officers. So we need, I would say that we should have a vote for chair and vice chair. And so why don't we start with chair? Okay,
Robert Dermody speaking. I hereby nominate Peter Pingatore as chair.
okay,
Second,
okay. Oh boy, I'm a little confused. Do we have any other, I think we asked for any other nominations. I'm looking
I
at
think you should.
Jean, though we, right, I'm turning to
Oh,
Jean.
turning to me as if I should know. I
So-
guess you as chair should ask if there are any other
All right, I would like to
nominations.
know, okay, so that's one nomination, and I guess we'll say, are there any other nominations for chair?
No.
Okay, hearing none, let's have any discussion.
I think you'll be great.
Okay,
I do
thank you.
too.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you. All right, I'm honored to be nominated, and I will accept the nomination.
Wonderful.
All right, so I guess we actually have to have a roll call vote. And so on the nomination of chair, Peter Pingatore. One. Yes,
No, this list isn't up to date. so-
I have my list.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Cecilia, who-
Joe Barnes,
yes.
Bob Dermott,
Yes.
Laura Dorfman,
Yes, definitely.
Reg Foster,
Yes.
Dina, I'm sorry, Dina Sunstein, Dave Harrer,
Yes.
Gene McKnight,
Yes,
Rick Zimbo.
Absolutely.
And the chair?
I don't think you can vote.
oh, yeah, of course you will.
Oh, he can vote.
He
Only
can vote
once,
for
though,
himself?
Peter.
Oh.
Yeah, he can vote for himself, or he could abstain if he was a humble individual.
Yeah, well, okay, so vote, Peter.
Bone amendment.
Aye.
That's awesome.
Landslide.
Okay, so now we're on to vice chair. And I would like to nominate Robert Dermody as vice
Well,
chair.
thank you.
Hmm.
Into that.
I'll second.
Dave Harrer seconds that nomination.
Was
Do we
that
have-
a my turn?
Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? All right, hearing none, let's discussion with respect to the current resolution on the floor. Hearing none, let's have a vote. Joe Barnes,
Most certainly.
Bob Dermody,
Yes.
Laura Dorfman,
Absolutely.
Rich Foster,
Yes.
Dave Harrer,
Yes.
Gene McKnight,
Yes,
Rick Zimbo.
Yes, and I want to note for the record, it's another humble individual who voted for himself.
No one knows how to do it right anymore. And the chair votes yes. Okay, congratulations. Looking forward to working with you,
Right back at you.
Professor Dermody. Okay. All right. Updates to CPA plan. Let's see. I think that we're moving along. I had hoped to turn around another draft, and actually it was just about through with it, but I just filed this under the dog ate my homework, but my notes from our last meeting are locked in my office. My office is currently being worked on. I'm working from home. So let's just, I will be able to turn another draft on the CPA section, pages 1 through 12, to you at our next meeting, which I think I anticipate will be on the 28th.
is the draft that was most recently circulated, the one that we thought it is part of the packet for our September meeting? Is it?
I believe that's right.
October or November?
I believe, no, I think it's a September meeting.
Okay, that's
Okay.
what I thought, yeah. And I have a question.
Sure.
I see a note to myself in the margin regarding open space and recreation, saying JSM, that's me, will review. Did I say I'd do that?
Yeah, you got it written right there.
If I said it, I will, but I was thinking more of the housing. And of course, we now have pretty much, we're gonna have a final vote on the 22nd on the housing plan, and then it will be our town's housing plan. Actually, that will be the housing plan working group voting on it, and we'll refer it to the select board and the planning board will also vote on it. But we have a housing plan. It's been a lot of work.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I would think, let's just deal with this, some of the logistics of this. So it seems to me that the housing plan would influence the community housing provisions of the CPA plan.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that we would want to wait until the housing plan was actually ratified, if you will, by the planning board and then the select board.
Yeah. Well, if
That's a question.
we're calling it the housing plan, December 22nd, 2023. That's when the housing plan working group puts the blesses it, when then I expect that the planning board and the select board won't take it up until February. But they both boards have met with the housing plan working group and given their input and so forth. So
Okay.
I don't really expect a problem.
All right, so I guess we could put together a working draft with your final housing plan, which would include any relevant provisions of your final housing plan. But I don't think that we should finalize it until we actually have the select board approving it as part of that, right, as a housing plan. So that kind of extends out the final approval of our plan. I mean, we're into March or April. Maybe we'll be lucky and still, what we had talked about was having a public hearing in March for both our pending, our 4 applications and the amendments to the plan. So we may be able to still do that.
Or hearings.
Or hearings.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So
As needed.
So that's, I'm just bringing that up because I think that looks like our schedule. I have met with Park and Rec, and Gene's identified an issue that's going to inform them of what their work is going to be. But I've met with Park and Rec and asked them to provide information. That's proposed amendments, assessment of needs, goals as detailed in the CPA plan. I gave them a short deadline of basically, I think it was by January 1. I don't know that they're going to meet that, and I don't know that it actually makes complete sense. Let's have a plan that's a real plan. It's going to be basically amended based on this working group. Let's, again, we may want to push the deadline out a bit. Dave, I've met with Conservation Commission. I believe you were at that meeting. And I've asked them to also provide any amendments that they have to the open space provisions of the CPA plan. So I just ask you to kind of bird dog that on the Conservation Commission. They had said at the meeting that they were going to be communicating with Park and Rec because they thought that there was overlap, and that's however they want to do it. It's fine with me. We just need that information because we need to move the process along. So I'll just.
That's on the agenda for a meeting tomorrow night.
Great. Okay, great. Oh, there you go. Okay, so we're pushing it along. We're leaning into it. All right. Okay, any other input from any other member of our committee regarding updates to the CPA plan and the subheadings that I discussed? All right. Jean McKnight.
Yes, the memo that was distributed for this meeting, it's a memo that goes back to May 30th, 2013, but it has to do with use of CPA funds for preservation of existing public housing. Of course, that would be part of the housing, part of our plan. And perhaps we would use that as a guide to articulate what is eligible for funding.
Okay, I think you could, I think you could want to discuss that maybe with representatives of the Housing Authority. The reason that because that is really the only publication on the government side that offers guidance about the use of CPA funds for basically DHCD funded housing authority units. That's the only thing we have. And so we use that as our guidance. I included that as part of our package because it's referenced in one of the applications by the housing authority.
Oh,
So I wanted to give everyone that document. It's one of those documents where I kind of put out there frequently so people look at it.
Yeah.
And so, but that's a good point, but I would say that you should talk, are you working on the housing, community housing plan provisions of this CPA plan?
that was
with-
my understanding.
And
that
you're
I
working
would-
with, and you're gonna get input from Reg Foster of the Housing Authority.
Well, I suppose I will. I don't recall previously saying, yeah, that's part of the job is to work with Reg, but I'm always delighted to work with Reg.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense. Reg is here. Okay. All right. Any other comments by meeting members? Excuse me, committee members. Okay.
Peter?
Yes. Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I raised my hand. I'm not sure if that's working.
I see it now. Okay.
I just, the other, and then I did this in anticipation of tonight's meeting. The database that's published by the coalition. If you go into that database and basically run a history of the database of all the projects related to housing, you'll see that every town has a number of projects that have been done that were obviously eligible for funding and have been funded. And some of them go into very substantial detail as to what was funded and what wasn't. So I think that also, just as a point of reference, that also would be a good source of information as we're starting to look at some of these projects.
And let me just add a caveat, which is that when that database makes clear that this is all self-reporting, that there's no really rep or warranty made by the.
No, that's true.
client At the projects are eligible or compliant with the law. So I just, kind of just bear that in mind, okay, because it's there doesn't mean it's, that it's compliant with the law. Or that it won't be challenged in some way. My view on it is that the easiest way to set precedent is to just, is to read the statute, rely on the statute and any guidance that we have. And that's going to be our easiest guide. But sure, there's a lot of resources on CPA, and there's some database information there that is illustrative, but just with that caveat, just bear that in mind. Okay. All right. So I think it's time. Why don't we go through our CPC applications? There are 4 of them. And why don't we discuss each one? It may be that we can resolve eligibility with some or all. It may be that some of them are going to be deferred. I'll tell you that before we begin our discussion that we had forwarded to our town council the applications for his review. I mean, I don't want to. I think that we still, as a committee, can exercise one of our responsibilities is to discuss eligibility, and so I don't want us to just completely abdicate our responsibility. We get a lot of guidance from our town council. There are some ones that are kind of tricky at times, and we want to rely on his advice and counsel, but we also have our own experience. So I think our council has been unavailable because of health and safety protocols, as was said. And so we haven't heard back from him, but I don't think that should preclude us from going forward and making some decisions if we think it's the correct one. All right, so with that in mind, why don't we just take them in sequential order? And we'll start with 2024-01, submitted by the Needham Housing Authority. And this is a request for, I believe, $1 million in connection with the Linden Chambers redevelopment. It seems like it's a very similar request for funding that we actually funded in our last last cycle. So we do have we do have a representative of the Housing Authority here, Rich Foster. And Reg, if you want, I'm sure we've all read these applications and we can have just a discussion, but if you want to provide us with a very brief synopsis to kick us off, why don't you do that?
Yes. So this is, a continuation of what we applied for last year. Since the award last spring, we've actually gone through an RFP process, and hired an architect engineer firm, BH&A, which happens to be the same firm that the town has used in several other projects, most recently and most notably from the CPC's point of view, the Emery Grover building project. We are scheduling a kickoff meeting sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks, may be after the first of the year, and proceeding with that scope of work, which I think everybody's familiar with. Looking into the crystal ball and looking in the plan ahead, sometime in the middle of the year, we're going to have to be lining up our financing plan. And we also will be, needing to commit to completing a number of tasks in the A&E designer RFS scope of work. And that will be done in the second half of the year and into the beginning of 2024. So this is an application for the remaining money that will get us to the point of being able to consider actually proceeding forward with construction phase 1.
Okay, and so if you look at paragraph 10, page 2 of your application, there's a summary there with 3 bullet points of what the application is requesting the $1 million for, and what it's needed for: pre-development activities for the construction document preparation and administration, to develop and secure the financing for construction phase 1, and then demonstrate town of Needham support, financial and otherwise, to incentivize the award of the state funding necessary to complete construction phase 1. So those are essentially your summary points of why you need the $1 million and what it will actually be used for, what it will be spent on, correct?
Correct. And of course, the 100 words or less, imposes a very considerable constraint on writing, getting everything in to the format, but we would expect to expand on this greatly next month, bring in our Cambridge Housing Authority consultants again, and work with our liaisons to provide a lot more information than you have in this application.
Okay, thanks, Rich. All right, so why don't we begin our discussion regarding application 01. If you'd like, I can call on people. Is that okay? We go in alphabetical order. If that's all right, and you can pass. There's no requirement. I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to participate. So let's start. We'll go in alphabetical order. We'll start with Joe Barnes. Joe, do you have any questions for Reg? And we're really focusing on the issue of eligibility this evening.
I may have a question or two once we get beyond the decision of eligibility, but I think that this application clearly falls within the 4 corners of what CPC is intended to do. So I have no problem with moving this forward as an application.
Okay, Bob Germany.
I concur with my colleague Joe.
Okay, Laura Dorfman.
Sorry, I was muted. So Reg, I'm all for this, but I just have some questions about the $1 million and how it's going to be spent. So what does it mean when it says complete the remaining Linden Chambers pre-development activities? And what does it mean when it says develop and secure the financing? Like what do those, and the third, I'm not sure I understand how that costs money, but what are the first 2 bullets? What are the costs specifically for that? Like, what is happening that you need $1 million?
Well, I have detailed spreadsheets that we'll be going over next month and probably publishing in response to your question. I assume these are questions you have for the application that you'll be submitting as a result of this meeting. And we'll
Okay.
be receiving from Cecilia and we have answers.
Okay, and this is part of the $37.4 million project that we talked about last year, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's $1 million and I'm not quite sure that I understand how what is that, what that's composed of. So I would
I
like to
would
see
not
that.
think it was possible with 100 words or less.
Yeah,
to be
I
honest
get
with
it.
you.
I get it. I get it. But you understand what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah, put it in your questions and submit
Okay.
it and we'll have answers
Okay.
next month.
Will do. Thank you.
Reg, remember, I'm the chair here, right? Okay, so that's, okay. So thank you for the advice that you're giving Laura. And but I think Laura, those are probably questions that go to kind of due diligence. Is there, and Reg, is there any, let me just say, is there anything that you can easily, throw a dart at right now and say, this is where the vast majority of this $1 million is going to be spent? Just, I don't want to put you on the spot. I know that we're primarily discussing eligibility, but if it's going to help one member feel more comfortable voting in favor of eligibility, let's try to respond to the question. Okay.
There's a phase 2 of the designer services contract, which you have a copy of from last year. And it spells out about $800,000 more of services that are needed before we're done with the designer services effort.
Okay.
So that might have been a good thing to put in here. I understand it's just, the beginning phase, but that might have been a good thing to list here. Because it just seems fluffy to me. That's
All
all.
right, so that we'll get all that information out. But all right, thank you, Reg, and that was a good question, Laura. And so why don't we? Okay, that's good. Any other
Thanks.
questions, Laura?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. So, Reg, I assume you don't have any questions for yourself. Dave Farrow.
I'm good.
Okay, or at least not on maybe on an existential level, but not with respect to this application. Just kidding, Reg. Don't lose you. Jean McKnight.
Yes, I want, first of all, I want to make sure I understand the particular buildings involved when we speak of demolishing eight existing single-story garden apartment buildings that include 32 units. Are these the ones, if you're going uphill, that are on the left and you see them right from the road and they kind of look like little garages, I always thought. Is that the buildings we're talking about? So you've got 4 connected units in each building?
No.
Is that what we're talking about?
I'm not sure it is, but let me try it a different way. If you stand in front of the ball fields
Yes.
on High Rock School and you face the Linden Street project, development with your back to the ball fields in the school.
Yes.
And to your left is, goes up to Oak Street.
Yes.
And right across from you are the 4-unit buildings. They're single-story buildings, and there's no hills whatsoever. It's completely flat. The buildings on your left, the 8 buildings on your left, each with 4 units in it, that's then separated by a parking lot by the other 9 or 10 buildings on the right. It's the 8 buildings on the left we're talking about. However, this is just a conceptual design from 2013. When our BH&A team gets going on this, they may come up with something different. I don't think so, but we will find out.
When I said uphill, I was only thinking of Linden Street itself, which goes in an uphill direction from Great Plain Ave.
Right.
So I know what you're talking about now. Now, will this demolish all of those buildings with it, not leaving any more of them, those buildings?
No, just 8 of them.
Oh, so there's more than 8.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And in the rear of that property, there's a multi-story building, correct?
There are 5 two-story buildings. Yes.
Okay, so we're not touching.
Brick buildings.
Brick buildings, so we're not touching those buildings now, we're just talking about the buildings on the front, and now I know what buildings you're talking about. How many are there in total?
So there are 8, the 8 buildings with 34 8s or 32. There's 5 buildings to the right of the parking lot that are similar buildings, 1-story, 4-unit buildings. That's another 40. There are a total of 72 units, very small studio units at the Linden Street development that all were built at the same time at the late 60s and 70s. Over where the brick buildings were asking for, they're on towards the right as you're still looking from that direction. There are 5 2-story built brick buildings that have 80 units in it.
Yes. All right, just wanted to make sure I understood what buildings we're talking about, thank you. And then on the 3 bullet points, the one that says demonstrate town of Needham support to incentivize the award, are you saying that the fact that the $1 million is granted, just that alone is what will demonstrate town of Needham support?
That and last year's grant, of course. And yes, so when you go after the various financing sources, and we kind of put together a layer cake of financing sources from various different places. Some of it comes from DHCD, some of it comes from other state agencies, some of it comes from tax credits. And one of the things that all these lenders who are putting money into a project look for is the town really behind the project? And of course, there's many ways of demonstrating that. You can have letters written and so forth. But one of the ways that is highly regarded is if the town itself has put skin in the game, its own money into a project.
That's what I thought. I thought the way it was in bullet points, it might be that we're hiring this consultant in order to do a public relations campaign in the town.
No.
Support. No, that's not what
No,
you
no,
mean.
no.
The $1 million itself is what shows the support.
Yes.
So the other question I had is, will part of this phase with these buildings involve seeking rezoning? It seems to me you're going to need rezoning for that density that you're proposing here. And what is the timing on that?
So this BH&A Designer Architect Services firm that will be kicking off the project in January, they'll be figuring out what we need. They'll figure it out after they confirm what the phasing plan is and the overall redevelopment plan is for the entire site. And I would expect sometime in the second or third quarter, well, maybe earlier, there'll be the usual process of initial communications with the planning department and the chairs and arranging for the timing. There'll be an initial kind of presentation of what BH&A is starting to have in mind. And there'll be feedback in various different ways, different iterations. And that will go on all next year so that by the end of next year, we'll have consensus, amongst all the involved boards and committees as to this is a good and well-designed redevelopment project for the entire 8.4 acre site. And this is a good and well-designed phase 1 of construction for that site. And whatever it turns out to be, here's what the zoning changes that would be needed to accomplish that. And then finally, here's the best way of accomplishing those zoning changes. As you know, better than all of us, Gene, there are 3 or 4 ways of getting there. That'll be part of the discussion next year.
Well, the timing seems right, because if the recommendation on what zoning is needed is all set by the end of 2023, that timing is good for the planning board to then begin the process for having it on the warrant for the 2024 annual town meeting in May 2024.
Yes.
Okay, all right, those are my questions, thank you.
Those are great questions, and Reg, thank you for your responses. Reg, so we, people rotate in at different times, so Jean was asking some questions about the kind of like basic layout, if you will, of the Linden Chambers development. And I know that you had put together various resource documents that you had linked to us and made available to us as committee members and various people in town. So if there's any offline, if there's anything you want to provide to Jean, there's an executive summary for your capital assessment plan. I can't remember I don't know if that's current, or the document that you would circulate with people who are looking for a good overview, but just provide Jean with a link so that she could do some reading about the general plan for the redevelopment. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Good, I'd be glad to keep on top of that. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, Rickson Bo, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and a comment. First question is the 37.4 million, is that the same number as was presented last year?
Yes.
Okay, that was number one. And you say you have the Housing Authority has developed a conceptual pro forma financing plan, which includes, among other things, additional CPA funding. Has that CPA funding been delineated in that pro forma, and can it be incorporated into the next round of due diligence questions?
So you have no to the first part of your question and yes to the second part. We provided a pro forma last winter,
That was a no.
I'm sure, yeah, and
Right.
and but there was also the pro forma showed additional town funding, but that is all overtaken by events at this point, and will be updated and extensively kind of reviewed with the CPC during the review process this winter.
Okay, so that's going to be, that particular pro forma may be subject to change between now and the amount, because as you know, we need that to develop the financing plan going forward.
Right, and also not just the CPA financing plan, of course.
Yeah,
but
right.
When I think of it, I'm just doing this out of my memory. We may have increased the construction costs since the last winter pro forma that we gave you. So that my answer to your 37 million may be an update that we did this fall based on what's happened to construction costs in the last 9 months or a year.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question, which is kind of tagging on to what Laura said, the $1 million you're seeking now, you have a breakdown of that $1 million. So how much is going for what and where?
Yes.
Okay. I just, I'm in favor of going forward with this. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to hold off on voting on eligibility until after we see that document, because I want to make sure as we review it that all the $1 million request is eligible for funding, if that's possible, Mr. Chair.
All right, I think, well, we can consider that as part of our deliberation. Okay. All Okay, so, all right, so now what we have then is, well, I think that what I would propose is that we have a vote on eligibility. Rick, I think, may have proposed maybe an amendment or a no, I guess, or propose an amendment to
A
defer,
delay.
to delay. So, but I think that that's how we should proceed procedurally, and hopefully I'll get the votes on the amendment correct this time. But that's what I would encourage you to do, Rick, okay? So it makes
I'm
sense.
sorry, Peter, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry, but what I would propose is that we have a motion to approve eligibility. And then you can amend requesting a defer until such time as we receive a breakdown on the $1 million. Unless, I would say, I guess the only other thing is that I could say if the proponent would agree to defer until that time, then that may make, we probably could just have an agreed to resolution. Okay, so a little flexibility on our procedural rules, and so, but I'll give the proponent an opportunity to respond to that. Just whether or not, here's the question. We agree to defer until we provide details of the $1 million. That's to Reg Foster, the representative proponent. Reg,
So what's the question?
okay, I don't know if I don't want to put you in an unfair position, Rich. I really don't. But what I see coming down is a motion on eligibility, and then a proposed amendment to defer eligibility pending receipt of a detailed breakdown of the use of the $1 million. And so my question is, well, if we can just agree that we'll defer, or we could just have our vote.
So I guess my comment on that is that, whatever the committee wants to do is obviously up to the committee. I thought we were talking about initial eligibility based on the information in
Okay.
provided in the form and the new section 11. And I don't know whether we will be ready to provide, the final pro forma financing plan that we've been working on, but we don't have our architects and engineers on board yet until we meet with the committee, towards the end of January. So if we want to defer the initial eligibility until the end of January, I guess that's fine. I don't know how that really affects anything.
Okay.
Uh,
All right, so
Peter.
we got hands up. We have a little discussion here before we have any resolution. All right, let's start. I think the first hand up with Rick, and then we'll go to Laura, if that's okay.
I think Joe was first.
Oh, I'm not seeing the whole screen. Can we take down?
Yeah, it's hard to see without this sharing.
We are.
So if we're
So-
fine with me stop sharing, we
I
can,
just want to know whose hand is up, that's all. So if Joe's got a hand up.
Joe's got a hand up for a long time.
I just want to clarify my point. That was all.
now you should see everyone.
All right, let's start. All right, well, all right, Rick, you want to clarify your point? Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't, just to make sure you understand, I wasn't looking for the entire financing plan. What I was looking for was a breakdown of the $1 million request that's appearing on this particular application. And I just wanted to look at that breakdown to determine each one of those items are eligible for CPA funding. That's all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the whole financing plan. I'm just looking
Okay.
for the breakdown of the $1 million. And I'm going to have a similar question, just to anticipate. I'm going to have a similar question on the next item as well. So
Sure.
we can I'll hold off on that until we get there, but I just want to point that out. And I don't think there's harm in waiting until we get that information. It's not going to impact anything other than, we may have the lawyer's interpretation as well.
Okay, all right, so that's your comment. Okay, hand up is Joe Barnes.
Yeah, I agree with Reg. I thought that the discussion at this point was going to be whether this application met the guidelines we have established for eligibility. And I didn't think we were going to go into the details of the application itself, but it seems as though that's where we've gone. I do have a question, since that's the direction we're going. The $1 million that's being requested here, that leaves 36 million something. And if I'm correct in understanding, that money will be garnered through low-income housing tax credits, mortgage, and I think Rick was referring to additional CPA funding. What do we anticipate? And is that what you're asking here, Rick? What do we anticipate going forward to be a burden on CPC here, our CPC, toward the overall construction of this application?
Yeah, that was the second half of it that I said can wait, Joe.
All right. Well, I guess I'd want to know, and we'll want to know going forward here, what do we anticipate Reg or the Housing Authority coming back to CPC for? How much more money are they going to be looking for from us, or is it just $1 million?
Okay,
Okay,
is that, well, all right, so that's part of the due diligence, but if Reg hasn't, as an answer to that, brief answer to that, then why don't we hear it?
I don't have a brief answer to that.
Okay, good. All right, so Laura, hand up.
Okay, so I don't think we should hold this up for eligibility. This is part and parcel of this whole project, which we've already endorsed.
all right.
I do think it would be great, and I know it's more work for you, Reg, and I don't know if people agree, to sort of lay out a timeline or a timeline with like anticipated needs and what's happening with the project, and just so that we can anticipate going forward what this is going to look like down the road, because it's going to take till 2024. You're going to be coming back for more money. And if there's any way to just plot that out for us, for me, that would be helpful. I personally would not want to hold this up for eligibility. I do think, as a follow-up question, we need to understand more about the $1 million and what it's used for.
Okay, so Laura, you've identified another very good due diligence question that you should put in writing and make part of your due diligence questions in connection with this application, okay? And so really, that's a good question. It's a good request. Make sure it gets into writing, okay?
Yep, definitely. But
All
I
right,
don't want to
so-
hold up. I just can I just say,
I know.
I don't want
understand
this to be held up as.
There's not, I understand. Everyone is arguing the resolutions that are not even on the floor yet. I understand that.
Okay,
That's good.
okay,
All right,
great.
that's good.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Okay.
Gene McKnight.
Yes, I agree with Laura, and I think that this application says what the money is going to be used for. In the first 2 bullet points, complete the remaining Linden Chambers pre-development activities, construction document preparation and administration and other tasks leading up to the start of actual construction, and develop and secure the financing of construction phase 1. That's clear. We don't necessarily know who's going to be paid. It might be Bergman, Hendry, and Archetype. I assume they're the ones who have been hired, but the task is right there. And I think it's clear enough at this stage that we can say this is eligible.
Okay, good.
Because
All
it's
right.
in relation
All right.
to an actual tearing down and rebuilding and increasing the number of housing units. It's clear that that in itself is an eligible activity, and this is related to that activity.
Okay,
I'm ready to vote on eligibility.
okay, we're gonna have, now,
Is everybody supposed to-
okay, let's have a resolution, a vote, resolution regarding voting on eligibility for FY 2024-01, and I anticipate that there will be a motion to amend.
A motion. You want a motion?
Let's have the motion.
Okay, a motion that we determine that application 2024-01, project name Linden Chambers redevelopment finance and construction expenses $1 million is an eligible activity.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, that's, all right, sorry.
By Laura Dorfman seconds.
Or actually, our newest member had his hand up and right here in the conference room. So Dave Harrer, seconded the motion. Okay. All right, discussion. Rick Zimbo.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would offer an amendment to that. And the amendment would be to postpone a vote on the eligibility until such time as we receive a more detailed description of the $1 million to be spent, and that that $1 million request, or the request, be reviewed by town council and approved. And I make that motion primarily because I don't want us into the same situation we were in last year, where the Housing Authority came forward with some requests for funding, and late in the game, we had to rescind the approval on a particular application as not being eligible. And I think, in all fairness to all the parties, there's no rush to do this today. We've many occasions have postponed the eligibility vote until later on. And so that's in the spirit of why I offer the amendment. I fully expect I'm going to support eligibility, but I think to make sure that we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we have all of the facts in front of us.
Okay, so that's your motion. Do I have a second for that motion? I will second that motion.
Or I'll second it.
So any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, let's have a vote. First, we're going to vote
On the amendment.
on the amendment. If we vote on the amendment and then vote favorably on
That we
the
don't.
main, we vote favorably on the amendment, then we will not have a vote
On the main
on
motion.
the main motion. All right, so first, let's do a roll call vote on the amendment. Joe Barnes,
No.
Bob Dermott,
Yes.
Laura Dorfman,
No,
Reg Foster,
No,
Dave Harrer,
No,
Jean McKnight,
No,
Rick Zimbo.
Yes,
The chair votes yes. Okay, the motion will then fails. That will be 5 to
Yeah, that's right.
fails
Yep.
by a vote of 5 to 3. Now we'll go to the main motion. Joe Barnes,
Yes.
Bob Dermott,
Yes.
Laura Dorfman,
yes,
Reg Foster,
yes,
Dave Harrer,
yes,
Jean McKnight,
yes,
Rick Zimbo,
no,
and the chair votes yes. Okay. All right, now, we'll move on now. So now we've resolved eligibility. What I want to do is go through these 4 applications, have a discussion if we have, and vote eligibility if it's possible with respect to each of the 4. And then I'm going to go on to assign CPC liaisons. Okay, well, let's finish with the 4 first. Okay. All right, now we're on to FY 2024-02 NH8 Seabeds Cook Preservation. And Reg, again, can you provide us with a brief overview summary of this application as a representative of the applicant?
yes. For all 3 of our federal properties, we've been working on a property conditions report since we last reported to the CPC. One of the 3 was funded by CPC monies for the High Rock. The other 2 we paid out of Needham Housing Authority reserves, and that was for Seabeds and Cook. We have completed those reports and detailed in very gory detail all the repairs that are needed in the short term, the medium term, and the long term, adding up to many tens of millions of dollars. The guidance as we wound up last year was that only certain of the repairs qualify for CPA funds. After we went through the sort of last minute situation that Rick alluded to, and it was governed by that public housing notice that was sent out to you folks by Cecilia earlier today. Adopting that guidance, we have determined from these detailed reports what proportion or percentage of the repairs for Seabeds and Cook qualify for funding under the CPA. We will this winter and into the spring be hiring an A&E designer services firm to do the design of those repairs that need to be done. We will also be submitting in a week or two in January the repositioning applications that will unlock the additional funding resources from the federal government. And this particular funding award request is to fund that proportion of the A&E designer services expenses and related expenses that are attributable to the repairs that are eligible for CPA funding.
All right, so let's begin with questions, and this is, we're focusing on eligibility. And so what I want to note too, that what I included in your materials was guidance from DHCD regarding the use of CPC funds with respect to local housing authorities. And I thought it had particular relevance to this application. Also in light of, especially in light of the fact that this application relies on it, cites that notice itself. So that and it's what it indicates both through the housing authority notice, public housing notice, and the application itself is it's really comes about as a result of kind of a particularly kind of fraught drafting language and restrictions in connection of what we can use to what we can do to we can use to not to in connection with redevelopment, tear down, rebuild, but with existing structures and the limitations in connection with that. So that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with not tearing down and rebuilding or gutting down to the studs and but actual what has been characterized as by the applicant as a preservation component in connection with kind of, I guess, gut rehab of the existing structure. So that's why I included that public housing notice that you received, and actually you may recall that you've seen that document before in connection with last year's applications that were submitted by the Housing Authority. Okay, so let's go with questions on eligibility. And Joe Barnes.
Well, you stole a little of my thunder, Peter, because I was going to note the fact that we're talking repairs. We're not talking about new construction or new redevelopment. These are units that are in the 1980s, so we've got 40 plus years of wear and tear. The need is obvious, and I think it meets the guidelines that we've established for an eligible application.
Okay. Bob Germany.
I concur.
Okay. Laura Dorfman.
Cecilia, can you scroll down on the application? Do you mind on the document? Okay, so right there is great. I'm all for this for sure. I just the description doesn't talk to, doesn't speak preservation to me. I want to support this so badly, but I just, everything I read under the bullets that it says CPA funding does not speak to preservation. To me, that's just my opinion.
Okay, let's see, Dave Harrod,
No questions.
Jean McKnight.
Yes, I see that what's been provided is a money table on the third page of the application, saying that Dietz and Company Architects and CHA, I guess that's Cambridge Housing Authority, have identified a detailed list of repairs that meet the definition of preservation and thus are eligible for CPA funding. And then it's calculated out in this table what the total repairs are and what percentage of the total cost are the eligible preservation repairs. I would have liked to actually see the detailed list of repairs. And unlike the prior application, in this one, I am wondering whether we want to get a town council's opinion so we don't have a problem later on, is this eligible, is this not eligible? Since it appears that the detailed list actually exists, I'd like to see it and have it reviewed by town council. So if a motion is made to deem this eligible, I'd like to make a similar amendment to what Rick made in the earlier application.
Okay,
I agree 100%, Jean. That's a great idea.
okay, Rick Simbo.
I mean, Jean's made my argument. That was the one I was proposing for the last amendment and this one. And I think that part of the problem is you're restricted to 100 words or less. And I understand and I can appreciate the applicant's struggle here into what to put into that and what not. But I'll go back and make the same argument I made before. There's no harm done in deferring eligibility. If you defer it 2 weeks until you get a copy of the report, that's fine.
All right, I would say that I agree with the comments made by Jean McKnight and by Rick Simbo, and I think that this is, particularly, that it has to do with a combination of the 100 words or less and the actual language of the statute, which is not easily interpreted. And I think that this is one of those situations that's kind of tailor-made to have our council give us advice in order to be fair to everyone, including most importantly the housing authority, and then secondarily to work with this committee. So I also would support the deferment.
And I wonder if Mr. Foster would be agreeable to that, and we thus wouldn't need to vote.
Okay, we could table eligibility if that's right. Is that what you're thinking, Jean?
Yes.
Okay, so we table eligibility until we get some additional detail that Jean has requested and also the opinion of town council, correct? Okay, I don't know, Reg, I don't know if you'll agree to that, but it's probably what the motion is going to look like.
Peter?
As
All right, there's a hand up.
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, I just had a question. Reg, if for some reason this request is not eligible for CPA funds, what would be an alternative to this? Do you have a backup plan? Not that that has any, influence on the decision here, because we're just dealing with whether it's eligible or not, but I'm just curious, where else would these funds come from?
well, we might have to borrow money. Really haven't considered that because we spent all our time being extremely careful that
Yeah,
what we submitted this time around is clearly eligible.
yeah,
And to comment on Jean's question, yes, these these 100-page plus reports exist. And also there's a multi-page spreadsheets that, with 100 or a couple hundred line items in various different categories of repairs, by the way, which includes preservation, the sort of two sides. These are repairs to preserve these buildings, roofs and exterior envelopes and so forth. And at the line item level, just if you remember what we had at Emery Grover,
Mhm.
at the line item level, you can clearly identify what repair is what, and map it against the DHCD notice 2013-14.
I think the problem
That
is
is
that
available.
I think the problem is there's all this stuff available and it's voluminous, and as I referenced before, kind of seeing something more succinct, that a summary or timeline, not to give extra work to anybody, but these two projects are expensive and long-term, and it's really hard to say you can look back at the spreadsheets or the whatever, but it'd be easier for people to understand what they're dealing with if they just saw something a little more succinct. So that's my only comment.
All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we have our motion, and we'll follow the drill, we'll follow the procedure that we did with our first one, which is we'll have a motion for the vote on eligibility. And then we can have any motions to amend, perhaps it'll be offered by either Gene McKnight or Briggs and Bone. We can vote on the amendment first. Okay, so let's have a motion to with respect to eligibility of this funding of this project.
I'll make that motion.
All right, Mr. Dermody makes the motion. Do we have a second? Bob,
Second.
okay, good. Okay, second and discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, I can't hear him.
All right, fine. Excuse me a minute. First, the motion was made by Bob Dermody, seconded by Dave Herrick. Now we're gonna have a discussion.
yeah, Mr. Chair, just from a procedural matter, rather than have on a record that how is this going to work? Are we going to be voting down, or what's going to happen here?
I thought we were gonna move to amend to defer until we have and I'll make that motion. I would move to amend the eligibility and to defer the question of eligibility until such time as we receive additional information as requested by our committee members and the opinion of town council regarding eligibility.
Okay, and if that passes, then
And-
you never vote on the first one.
Right.
Right,
Gotcha.
like we did last time, yeah.
Okay,
So
I
I'll make that
understand.
motion. Okay, I'll make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, good. So now let's move, so now does everybody understand we have a motion to amend and then a motion? All right, so motion for eligibility. All right, first on the motion to amend,
Discussion on.
oh,
motion to amend?
discussion on the motion to amend.
I think we've
Okay,
had
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and we have. Hearing none, let's have a vote on the motion to amend. Joe Barnes,
Yes.
Bob Dermody,
Yes.
Laura Dorfman,
Yes.
Reg Foster.
I think I will just abstain here.
All right, Dave Harrell,
Yes.
Gene McKnight,
Yes.
Rick Sabone,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay. All right, now moving on to FY 2024-03, DeFazio Playground. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Our representative from Park and Rec is not here. But I
There
think
is a Park and Rec member, I believe, on the attendee list.
no, Dina is not here.
No.
Oh,
Chris is
as
in
an
the audience.
attendee, it's Chris
Yeah.
Purcell. He's a
Attendee.
member of the public.
Oh.
This is a public meeting.
Yep.
Okay,
Sorry, Chris.
so, all right, so this is for design funds for the DeFazio Playground renovation. All right. I assume that we've all had an opportunity to review this. And so I don't know that we have much to discuss. We don't have a representative here to answer any questions. Do people have particular questions about this application? Anyone? Do we have questions? Rick Zimbo, hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I just want to go back. The last couple of years, we've had discussions about whether, and not only here, but elsewhere, about whether we should be separating out the design fund in a separate article versus the total cost of the project. And I just want to discuss whether anybody has any concerns about that. People have expressed it in the past, and I just throw it out there just as a question more than anything.
I don't know that I fully understand what you're saying, so can you unpack that a little bit for me?
Well, I'll try. In times past, we've had to justify before town meeting or before the finance committee, why are we spending $35,000 to do a design study and then spend money on the project? And I just want to make sure that we're all okay with doing that. That's all.
Meaning, are you saying, why are we spending $35,000 on the design project? And with or without consideration of the cost of the
Yeah, I don't remember what the objections were previously, but
Can I-
you know, people were standing up saying, you know, why are we spending, you know, this small amount of money to do the design work? And you know, is it eligible? Yeah, if that's the question, I'm fine with that. But the problem is that you know, the design money, $35,000. Do we want to spend that? That's all.
Okay. And
And
I think,
that's not brought up by me. I'm just trying to reiterate the questions that have been brought up in the past.
yeah, so I think that one of the questions has always been, are there adequate funds for funding the project, right? So
Yeah.
something. There has been, I think you're right, kind of some expressed concerns by members of town meeting about the relatively small dollar amount for design and then the larger amount for the project itself. And is that some, you know, should we have a fuller discussion about total cost? Is that was the sense that I was.
Yeah, I think that maybe that was the intent behind the question.
Okay, all right. All right, any other questions? All right, yes, Bob? Yes, Dave.
You know, get on that same subject, I don't think they have enough money for design, and I don't know if and when that would get fleshed out. Because that area is in like in a wetlands area, and they got to do some delineation, which I think will add to the cost.
I'm not sure I quite understand what you're saying. That they need.
I'm saying that in general, I mean, putting aside the question of, yeah, before you build something, you have to design it. And, you know, design costs money. And, you know, that's just the fact of life. I don't think that 35,000 is enough money to properly design that.
All right,
facility.
well,
And so my question is, when would that get fleshed out during the due diligence phase? And
well, they're saying that that's enough money. You know,
Yeah,
they're the applicant, right? And our due diligence is to say, okay, what are you gonna do with the money? Is it gonna, you know, one of your question might be. is
yeah,
it enough?
yeah. Are you covering this? Are you covering
Yeah,
that?
yeah, those are, but again.
Yeah.
It's important to write that down. Those are good questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Bob Durham, question.
Yeah, real
Comment.
quickly, Mr. Chair. I think it's eligible. I agree with Dave's comment about concerns about design at that location. They even addressed it in their application. And I think maybe our liaisons and our board and the actual proponents of the public hearing need to do a job with our coaching talk about the big picture here. What's this gonna cost totally? 35 grand now, 5 million total later, whatever it's gonna be, 500,000, whatever that number is. And just put that, you know, back to the proponent. So the questions that we get, as Rick mentioned, have been aired at a public hearing. So everybody, you know, full disclosure, everybody knows what we're getting into long range, even though, and that's why I think we have it on the application, total project cost. So if people aren't reading that, it may be up to us and the proponent to make sure people know that, that's all.
Okay, see hands up, but I think that
They-
Jean McKnight.
Yeah.
Had her hand
They
up.
did, so they did put, and then they did put a total project cost.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's evident to me that people don't know that.
Uh-huh, yeah, and yes, and my only comment or question is, since we're focused on eligibility, and I think that's appropriate for this, that we should be able to make a decision on this. And it's, I'm always somewhat confused about the ambiguous language that's used in the Community Preservation Act on what is open space and what is active recreation or recreation. You know, and when it comes to open space, we have to devote a certain percentage of our CPA money to open space projects. Recreation projects, we don't have to devote a certain amount of our money to it, but we can spend it on recreation project. It seems to me this is a recreation project, which is fine, but in making a determination of eligibility, I just want to keep that in mind, and that we are approving this as eligible as a recreation project.
So I think that's important to point out, and I think you're right about that. There's always been some confusion about, but I agree. You're right. It's a recreation, it's a recreation, capital improvement. And yes, recreation, recreational resources can be open space, but it doesn't mean that open space reserve funds can be used on that project.
Exactly.
So there's always some, that's why it's checked as open space. I don't know, I
don't
doubt-
think it should be.
I don't
checked as
think,
open
I don't think it's
space.
eligible. I don't think it's eligible for funding under the open space restricted funds. I think it's eligible for funding as a recreation project.
Yeah, and I think if we make that clear, even though they've made, I wouldn't reject it just because they checked open space and that's not open space. But I think we'd make it clear that we don't consider it an open space project.
Right, I think the same.
Determination.
Right, I think that's fine. I think we should do that in our eligibility, and that guides really how we finance the project. Okay, hand up, Rick Zumba.
Yeah, Peter, thank you. I just, two things, and I think you just answered what I was going to say. The first one is, when it's listed as recreation, typically we fund it out of the general reserve, not necessarily out of the open space bucket. And that's usually the way we account for it when we do our accounting later on. My question, and I don't know the answer to this, but I remember there was some swapping of jurisdiction by the town some time ago. And my question is the jurisdiction for this property under Park and Rec, or is it jurisdiction under the school committee? I think wasn't there a swap of land and this became part of the jurisdiction of the school committee for schools held for future use? And I don't know if you have to go back and ask the school committee or not.
I don't think so. I don't remember that.
Well, no, I think that's a general, if you're asking that general question to the committee, I don't know the answer to that.
Maybe the committee member who's on as a participant.
The liaison can find that out, because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter whose jurisdiction it is, it still could be eligible for funding as recreation under CPC.
I think that whole complex is part of the Fazio, which is Park and Rec, not. the
Okay,
school.
so did you hear what Dave Harris said? He's speculating, but he's feeling confident
Yeah, I looked it up.
that he's gonna get out on a
Guys doing his
limb.
homework.
Well, that's fine. Dave could be correct. I just wanted to make sure that somewhere down the road, someone's not going to say, this project is being done at the site of the next elementary school in town.
Okay, good. And so again, I would like you to, that's an excellent question, and you must write it down and you must include it as part of your due diligence questions. Okay, I think it's really important. It's a good question, Rick. All right, hand up, Bob Dermody.
Thank you. If I may go again, refresh my memory, Mr. Chair. If the town wanted to build a brand new playground where one never existed, is that CPA eligible?
It would be a capital improvement to a recreation site, and and therefore it would be eligible.
Great, thank you. No further questions at this time.
Okay. All right, Are there any other hands up? Because again, I can't see everyone. If it could be. Are all questions being, do we know?
There should be everyone now in this
Okay, good.
score.
All right, so this is $35,000 for design funding, and having to do with a later redevelopment of the tot lot at the Fazio Recreation Facility. All right, let's have a motion for eligibility. Dave Harrer moves that the project is eligible for funding under CPA, and then recreation, would you agree for under recreation?
Absolutely.
Recreation, okay. We have a second for that. Anyone want a
Second.
second? Second is by Laura Dorfman. Okay, discussion.
I'm sorry to be a stickler about this. In 2 sentences sequentially, it says the words renovation and new playground. And maybe I'll stretch this to say it has to do with eligibility, because that's why I asked my prior question. Both are eligible, renovations to playgrounds and new playgrounds. But I guess a fair question that now borders into due diligence is, which is this?
Could be both.
Part, yeah, that's true, could be part, both, yeah, okay. I guess I'm thinking like, say they take everything out that's there now and build a new playground, is that a renovation or a new playground? It doesn't matter.
It's a capital improvement, so
Great, no further questions.
I mean,
Thank you.
we can ask, I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's bordering in due diligence.
I'm sorry to, but that's a good question, and we can put that in due diligence, but I think, feel pretty confident that this, that we funded these kinds of projects. Good ask. Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Further discussion? All right, hearing none, let's have a vote. Joe Barnes.
Yes.
Bob Dermody,
Yes,
Laura Dorfman,
Yes,
Reg Foster,
Yes.
Dave Harrer,
Yes.
Gene McKnight,
Yes,
Rick Zimbo,
Yes,
and the chair votes yes. Okay, now we're moving on to FY 2023-04, submission by Park and Rec Department.
Peter, can I just make a quick comment? I noticed when I looked at the labels of the documents that they were labeled 2024. Cecilia, is that,
Our
was
FY
that,
That's our FY year.
Yeah, because
20
the funding will be available for what is our fiscal year 2024, which starts July 1, 2023, even though it's voted on in May of 2023.
got it. Thank you very much.
I'm constantly working in about 4 different types of years, so it's very confusing.
Okay, sorry, just wanted to understand, sorry.
Okay, so it's FY 2024-04, Claxton Field. This is improvements to Claxton Field. We've seen this application before. And this is improvement to, I guess, the infield skin area. We've had full presentations. Some of us were, I guess Gene wasn't a member. Dave was not a member at the time. Looking at a roster, I think everyone, maybe Reg wasn't, but I think everyone was and has seen full presentation concerning this application, and it was just withdrawn. Basically what, if you may recall. All right, hand up, Joe Barnes.
I need clarification on the amount requested versus the estimated total project cost. 1.78 is requested and the total cost for the project is 1 million. Is that, what am I missing?
Good catch, Joe.
That's a good
is there a
racket.
typo?
Yeah.
well, 780,000 is going into Chris Gerschel's pocket, I guess.
They should be reversed.
Okay.
The amount requested is 1 million and the estimated total project cost is 1.78.
Good thing we have
Okay, so we'll-
Cecilia here.
All right, so, okay, so we're gonna make that correction, right? We'll have that.
Yeah.
corrected. Okay. All right, and, let's see.
Can we note that in any vote we do,
Yeah,
please?
Yeah, okay. All right, so Rick, your hand is still up. Do you have additional questions?
I do. Well, I have an initial question on this particular application. If you remember, last year, this was withdrawn for consideration because of some environmental issues, if I've got the right field, and it was going to be relocated to and the money was going to be reallocated to redo McLeod Field up at the DeFazio complex. And is this a change in planning by the Park and Rec Commission? And what's changed on the property? From what I understand, Claxton was unable to be built upon because it's the site of the
Dump.
yeah, thank you, the old one. Am I missing something here?
No, I mean, it doesn't, I guess another way of putting your question is, the project, the request was withdrawn last year as a result of test borings that they made in the outfield area, and that it continued to be an unsettled area, and there may have been some environmental, I know it had to do with settlement and unsettling, but the test borings were not positive. We're not trending very well. So there's a question there about what's changed from last year to this year. And you also have a question of, I thought that they were reallocating those resources to another field and basically letting Claxton sit as is. So you have a question about that.
That was my understanding, Peter. That's correct.
What's the plan here? What's your plan? What's the capital plan here with respect to these fields for Park and Rec is what you're asking, right?
Correct.
All right, so the question really is that an eligibility question? Do you want to make it, do you have a concern? Does that go to the question of eligibility, Rick?
Peter, I'm honestly, I don't know. I'm looking at it as we laid out our 5-year capital plan for CDC funding. And this project doesn't show up anywhere. It showed up and it was replaced by McLeod Field. And I'm just wondering, are we different than where we were before? Is this the same? Have we gone backwards? And whether it's an eligibility question or not, I mean, to reconstruct the field is probably eligible for funding, but I just think we need clarification as to the plan by the Park and Rec and by the DPW apparently with what they plan on doing here.
Okay, so I guess what we could do is, we've done this in the past, which is we've deferred and asked a representative. To come in and discuss, have a preliminary discussion with us regarding eligibility. So that's one thing that we can do. We've done it in the past. Unfortunately, we don't have a representative of planning of Park and Rec here tonight, so I think it might make sense to do that, but let's hear from Dave Harroway.
Yeah, along that same line, it's not clear what the $1 million is going to be spent on. Like the total project, 1.7, when they just talk about redoing the whole field, but what is the component for the $1 million?
So you're asking similar questions that we asked of the housing authority with respect to Park and Rec, right? It's a fair question.
Well, no, I think the housing authority did spell out where
Yeah,
they're spending the money, and
I
here
understand. Yeah.
here they're not. They're saying
Okay.
here's the big project.
Well,
Okay.
point of information,
Yes.
is the public allowed to speak at this meeting?
No,
Thank you.
this is a committee meeting. It wouldn't be fair because to have just some random members of the public speak, because you're actually then kind of disenfranchising those who didn't know they can show up and speak. Okay, so I think in fairness to the public at large, we don't have the public speak. Okay. We will take, I think the way to kind of deal with that is if we have citizens who send staff emails and they can send CPC members emails and we can address those. Okay. All right. Okay, Jean.
Yeah, a couple of things. Again, I think this is not an open space project. I think it's a recreation project. But I think it's really not clear. Have they done any design studies to identify these problems and explain how they're going to be addressed? It says under community need, the field renovations will enhance turf conditions, but they don't exactly say what needs to be done. And then up above, project summary, the installation of new skinned infields and revised grading of the outfields. Well, have they actually had an engineering study that said this is what needs to be done? I don't see how we could fund something if we don't know for sure that that's what needs to be done.
We have.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, just a point of order here. We do have a member of the Park and Rec Commission who is here available to replace the member of the committee who's apparently sick. Is there any particular reason why that person can't speak?
I mean, well, generally, the issue is that.
The applicant himself.
That
Oh, yeah.
is that you don't want to allow members of the public who happen to be here to speak when the rest of the public understands that they get to speak at a public hearing. This may be an exception. We have a representative of Park and Rec, so I think that we can exercise some discretion and allow that individual. Who is the individual?
If you go to the participant listing, Chris Gershel is an attendee.
And now, who is he? Just kidding. Okay, emeritus member, I guess, of CPC.
Would you like me to promote?
All right, let's promote Chris. I think that's okay. We'll
But
be fine.
He is,
Should we
he
vote
is
on
a
that?
member, he is a member of the Park and Recreation Commission.
He is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but they're the applicant, sure. Why
Sure,
not?
they're the applicant. Gene McKnight's given us.
Ooh, I like that. I'll take it under that.
Gene is giving
I
us
can
her legal
sleep now.
opinion. Let's go.
I've been retired for
No.
8 years.
You look a
Good
little,
evening, everybody.
look a little different than when I last saw you. I can't quite figure it out, but let me go. Why don't you start talking? and
Did you
maybe
lose
it'll-
another bet,
maybe it'll come to me. Okay, maybe it'll come. To me.
It's that new Zoom filter. Makes me look more handsome.
All right, why don't you
So-
state your name? State your name.
My name is Chris Gerstel. I am the current chair of the Park and Rec Commission. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the the CPC Commission for having me on this evening.
Okay. So did you happen to listen in on some of the comments and questions that we had regarding eligibility and generally this project?
I did, and if I may address some of the questions, if that's okay, kind of go back a little bit here and give a little history of this. One of the questions was in regards to McLeod and Claxton. Now, I don't have the exact date, but Cecilia, you might be able to help me out on this, that McLeod was actually approved via CPC years ago for design funds. So this has always been in the queue. Now, it just happened to be when we were working on McLeod, we were also working on some design work of what we could do with Claxton, and that's when the boring samples came out. Now, in regards to where we're going with McLeod, we're not doing a quote unquote bait and switch here. McLeod was already in the cycle for CPC and on the Park and Rec's radar to be redone. We have found alternate funding sources for that, so that will not be going through CPC, but it was funded for design years ago. Now, in regards to Claxton, we are still working on that. We did withdraw it last year because we did not have all the information at that time and did not want to submit an article without all the information. We have done our due diligence and now come back to the CPC with all the information that we need to make this as a possible eligible application for CPC for this funding cycle.
All right, well, you actually did submit the application. You withdrew it.
Excuse me, yes, we withdrew last year's Claxton application.
And the question really is, our understanding was that you withdrew it as a result of test borings.
That is correct.
So what has changed between last year and this year?
Because we have used more testing to find out of what we can do for the facility. That, like I said, at the time that we originally were submitting last year's application, we were in the process of doing the boring samples. When we got some information back of the boring samples that we found out we needed more information on, that's when we decided to withdraw that article. In that time, we have done boring samples with, I want to say it is, if it's not Ty and Bond, it is one of the other companies that we have used, that we have found a suitable way to do the work that we had originally planned over at Claxton.
All right, we have a hand up from Laura Dorfman. Laura?
Hey, Chris, great to see you.
Laura, always a pleasure.
I feel like that information should be in this in this request, because it,
Sure.
as Rick said, it's sort of like we need to connect the dots, right? And I don't know how everyone else feels, but I think that would be great if we could revise this a little bit, and just explain the history.
Okay.
Understood.
All right, any other questions or comments? Gene McNutt.
A comment, just going back to, was there a design? Is there a report? So what I'm hearing from Mr. Christo is that, yes, we're all set to begin construction. We know exactly what we need to do.
Mhm.
We have a report from Ty and Bond. Is that the case? And
Yes, we have design, we have plans, we have everything that we need.
oh, okay.
Hand up, I'm sorry, Dave, Harry.
Yeah, just one quick question. What's the difference between the $1 million requested and the 1.7 total? Is it,
Because the total cost of the project, there are some items that are ineligible for CPC funding. So we know that the total cost is 1.78. We're only deeming that $1 million of that is eligible for CPC funding.
so what's described in the application encompasses the $1 million worth of work?
In regards to the $1 million worth of work, it is under the community needs and description of of what's going on of eligible for CPC.
And the other money is not described.
No, it is not, because I mean, we can do that in a report. We can give you that information, but we only wanted to give the stuff that was prevalent towards CPC funding.
I just wanted to clarify that. That's all.
Sure.
Thank
No,
you.
that's fine.
I'm sorry, Dr. Mr. Gerstall, this is Mr. Dermody speaking.
Always a pleasure, Vice Chair.
Would you care to elaborate on how you determined what was, in your opinion, CPC eligible and what was not?
Working with the design firm that we have that designed Claxton, that we went through it line by line item of what is eligible, because they have actually worked on projects like this before, and they have the knowledge of knowing what would be eligible under CPC funding and what would not be eligible under CPC, because they have, again, done projects like this before.
Great, that's good to hear. And then, so is it fair to say this is money you're seeking construction dollars?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Do you have a breakdown of the total cost, 1.7, and how an actual, spreadsheet breakdown of what's eligible, what's not?
We do. We can supply that to the CPC at any time.
All right, any other questions?
Peter, I would just say it's Laura Dorfman that some of this would venture into the follow-up questions, like, as you noted before. I think
Yes.
it's hard for us to have these conversations and not go there, but that's all I want to say.
Good, okay. All right, thank you, Chris. Thanks for, any other questions for Chris Purcell?
Good job, Chris.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
You make a great member of this committee.
Okay, so, let's see. So now what we are discussing here is eligibility. And so the question is, there's some discussion earlier about deferment. There's some, now we add a member, a representative of the proponent who's answered some questions. So I'm prepared to take, if there's a motion on the floor.
I move that we deem this to be this Claxton Field construction to be eligible as a recreation project for CPA funding.
Second by Dave Harold. Okay, discussion, Rick Bone, your hand. is
Mr.
up.
Chair, I believe that this falls along the same category as what we just voted on with respect to the Housing Authority project. And I would suggest that I offer an amendment to table this until we receive the backup information delineating the million versus the 1,750,000. In similar vein is what we just did for the Housing Authority.
Okay. Second on that motion,
I will second that motion.
and Bob Dermody seconds the motion. Okay.
Discussion?
Discussion.
Wouldn't that information be part of the discussion later on after we've determined eligibility? Once we get into the weeds, we then can get the details of what is covered under the $1 million and what's not. But as a general idea of whether this particular project falls under the guidelines of an eligible application, I think it can stand on its own as is.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I hate to disagree with my esteemed colleague, Mr. Barnes, but this falls along the lines of Emery Grover and how much of that was historical preservation money and how much of it was for just general design. Similarly with the Housing Authority, how much of that breakdown is for eligible funding under the CPA versus not eligible funding under the CPA. And I just think in fairness to the proponent, he has the information readily available. If he just submits it to us and we look through it and say, yep, the consultant is correct, then we can proceed. I mean, this is another one of those that if flown by the town council will also be able to offer an opinion on whether it is eligible or whether it isn't eligible.
Thank you. All right, so let's have a vote, and we're going to begin with the motion to amend, which is to defer until such time as we receive a breakdown of the $1 million of alleged eligibility versus the total project cost of 1.78 million. Okay, so first on the motion to amend, vote affirmative of that will end the vote. Okay, if negative vote, we'll move on to the main motion. Okay, motion to amend first. Go Barnes.
Are we having a vote or a discussion?
I thought we were having, I thought we were done with the discussion. If you want to continue, Gene, I will, that's fine.
Oh, it has a question that would inform my vote. I'm looking over the description. I'm wondering whether the separation of the 1 million and 1.7, are they going to use artificial turf or in this project at all? Does anybody know?
I don't think that that's being represented at all here.
Because that's not ineligible. So I was
Correct.
wondering whether that was why they were separating it out.
Yeah, no. I don't think there's any intention. to
Okay,
have
no
artificial
intention,
turf.
no.
Informed
All right.
through social
Because
media
that
now.
would be my only concern on whether it's eligible or not. As long as it's not artificial turf. Okay, thank you for allowing me to ask that question.
Okay,
Chris.
Joe Barnes.
I will vote to support my esteemed colleague, Mr. Zambone, by supporting the amendment.
Bob Dermott,
Yes.
Laura Dorfman,
No,
Reg Foster,
No.
Dave Harrell,
No,
Gene McKnight,
No,
Rick Zimbo.
And let me just clarify, is this a vote on the amendment?
Is.
Yes.
Okay, so a vote yes is a vote to defer it a week.
Okay, and the chair votes yes. All right, what's our tally?
4-4.
Oh,
overtime,
okay, so
Penalty
like the
kicks.
Bruins.
Is this sudden death?
We're shooting it out.
Gonna go to penalty kicks.
this is not a majority.
Exactly.
Where's Kamala Harris when you need her?
not sure I know what we do.
I think-
Majority.
Yeah,
What do we
think
do
it-
now?
I think it needs to
It
be,
fails.
it fails, yeah.
yeah.
It fails, so now let's go to the main motion. Okay, now we're going to the main motion. This is on eligibility. Joe Barnes,
Yes.
Bob Dermott,
Yes.
Laura Dorfman,
Yes,
Reg Foster,
Yes.
Dave Harrell,
yes,
Gene McKnight,
Yes,
Rick Zimbo,
No,
and the chair votes yes. Okay, so we have eligibility, and we will be sure, Rick, to, I would devote your efforts on due diligence questions around the questions that you raised that supported the motion to amend. All right, so now we're moving on. We're going to assign liaisons. And we've discussed eligibility. We've had our votes. Now we're on to assign liaisons. We're going to have some, after that, we're going to move through quickly. We'll deal with recording secretary updates, additional question about the design of our sign. That's some fun stuff, and then we'll adjourn. Okay, so first, this is what I like to do, which is let me propose a roster. Just hear me out, okay? And then you can all object, which is what you usually do, which is fine. Okay, so and so just but hear me out. So get your pen and your pad out. Okay. This is proof positive that I don't, work these votes ahead of time. Here we are. Housing, Linden Chambers, here's my proposal we have 4 applications. We've got 9 members. And so here's what I propose. Linden Chambers on 01, just write this down. Liaisons, Laura Dorfman, Bob Dermody, Rick Zimbo. My thinking on that is Laura and Rick were on these NHA projects last year, so consistency is important. And also that Bob Dermody is our resident architect. The next one, 02, Seabeds, Cook Preservation. Rick Zambone, Bob Dermody, Dina Hannigan. My thinking on that is consistency with Rick Zambone, architect and Dermody, and Dina is a junior member of our committee, and she needs to be brought along, if you will. FY 2024-03 DeFazio Playground. Here I'm kind of up in the air, but I was thinking of Joe Barnes and Dave Harrer. Excuse me, that was Claxton Field. I'm sorry, that was Claxton Field. Let's go back to 03. I was thinking of Gene McKnight or Reg Foster. And if either of you want to break, I know that both of you have a lot of work to do. I'll jump in and replace one of you, but maybe one of you can hang with
We
me.
will be getting other applications, correct?
No, this is it. So
This is it?
This is it.
Oh,
This is a
well,
light year.
this was a deadline. Wow.
Okay, this is it. So this is a relatively light year. Okay,
Okay.
so that's those are my proposals. And I'll
Mr. Chair.
squeeze you out. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Barnes.
Just so that I'm straight here, 03, which is the playground. Is
That's
that right?
DeFazio or Clax, because
Which one is 03 that you just gave to Gene and to Reg?
Yeah, I thought you only
Claxton, no.
mentioned Claxton.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Claxton.
Wait a minute.
DeFazio is 03 and Claxton is 04.
All right, so who's on? I'm confused.
Who's
Yeah,
on
you know
first?
what? I'm sorry.
Who's-
I'm sorry. Let's
who's
do
on
that
04?
again. Wait a minute, I had it right the first time. So 03 DeFazio is McKnight
Mhm.
and Foster.
Yep.
And if either of you need a break because you have a lot going on, I'll jump in. Okay,
Okay, and Claxton,
Can you repeat all 4, please?
And then-
Claxton?
Claxton,
Claxton, Barnes, and Harrer.
You're on Claxton, Joe.
okay,
And if you don't, and again, this is all my suggestion, so.
This is where we all talk at once.
Yeah. So I know everyone's gonna have opinions, but maybe you're all gonna like this. I don't know.
I'm fine with mine.
Okay, so, all right, Dermody likes his assignments. Thank you. Any other comments?
On DeFazio, I would defer it to Reg if he feels he's too busy, because so much is happening at the housing authority. And rather than saying, I'm too busy. So,
Okay, Reg?
No, I look forward to doing DeFazio and look forward to working with Gene again.
Look at that.
okay, I guess we can manage it.
How can you resist that?
Okay, that's great.
Playground for little kids.
but shouldn't
I'll
Reg
get my
be on?
granddaughter on the committee.
All right,
Should
Claxton
it
Field. So, all right,
Reg
so that's
be
great.
on 02 as well?
that again. Say-
Peter?
I'm sorry. Yes, Laura.
Shouldn't Reg be on 02?
No, Reg can't be on 02. He's the proponent.
But he's the proponent for 01, isn't he?
He's
But he's
the proponent
on
of 01 and
not
02.
on 01,
He's not.
no.
Okay, how is that?
Laura, from what I hear, and I took down the NHA 01 Linden Street, is you, me, and Rick Zimbone.
No, I understand, but I don't understand how Reg is not part of 01 and 02.
We will be talking to him as the proponent.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully you're gonna be talking to more of the executive director, their
Rich, yeah.
consultant, you
Yeah.
know, well, no, and talk to Margaret Moran directly, you've got a consultant there, okay? Okay. All right, so, everyone feel comfortable with their assignments?
Yep.
Okay, great, that's great. I don't mean to shame you into agreeing to that, I really don't.
no,
Okay, all right, but that's good, thanks. All right, so, with that.
Peter?
Yes, yes. Rick.
Excuse me, just a request. Since my term on this committee may be short-lived, can we assign someone to work with me on going through the financial spreadsheet?
I would like to do that.
That's fine.
If
It's up to the chair.
that's acceptable to the chair and to you.
Is it okay, can we have, Bob Dermody do that? That's what I was thinking, Laura, but that's, all
Yeah, that's cool. That's fine. Whatever you want to do, it's fine.
right, let's,
Would Mr. Zimbone accept Mr. Dermody?
With gracious gratitude.
all right, good.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm
Okay.
just looking
I
for
understand.
someone to help.
But you understand that that's that I'm gonna do that too, right? You understand that's, because I'm not.
I understand, but in case I get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Don't say that.
All right, so the three of
Strike
us,
that from the record.
okay, good. All right, that's fine. Okay, so.
All right, so Peter, I'm sorry, it's Laura again. I know that Reg is not the quote unquote proponent for both of these, but I worked with him last year on both of these, and I know that I just feel like it would be easier if I was involved in both of them with him, if he would have me.
All right, so here's the thing, Reg is not the liaison on these projects, and he wasn't last year. Because of really of the staffing issues at the housing authority at the time,
Right.
they were going through a transition with executive directors. Reg played a more assertive role, which I think and so, which was a little unusual, and I think that he may not be having as assertive a role. He's got an executive director now. He's got Margaret Moran, who's everyone in town has met, who's a consultant from Cambridge Housing Authority. Reg is going to be involved, but he's not the liaison, okay?
No,
So,
but the projects are continuations of what we've been dealing with.
I know, and so so are you saying that well, you're on 01 and with Rick, and that's on the Linden Chambers development, which is a pretty substantial
That's the big
request.
one.
That's the big one, okay? And then Seabed's Cook Preservation is a smaller request, maybe largely legally directed. And so that's something that's different, that has never been before you, you've never worked on in the past. So
Okay.
that's why I brought someone else in.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I
okay.
I'm just looking for continuity to make things.
Well, we got continuity because you're, so I think I've kind of struck that balance. Okay,
Okay, that's fine.
You're
I
the
don't need,
continuity
I really
part.
don't need any more work, but that,
Okay.
so that's fine.
okay, good. All right, so, okay, so now I think one thing something that's not on here, and I got to give credit where credit is due. Reg had brought this to my attention beforehand, which is kind of a deadline date for us as CPC members to provide our due diligence questions in addition to the standard questions, okay? So if I can ask Cecilia, what is it that we have proposed for our proponents to submit? We're gonna now, on eligibility, we now turn around and we issue their requests, the due diligence questions. And
We,
then we ask them, go ahead.
we had proposed that CPC members get the due diligence questions by December 23rd. And then by January 1st, we would notify applicants of eligibility and distribute the questions to the applicants with, I believe, the understanding at our next meeting on December 28th, we would discuss the due diligence questions and make sure we had all of them that we wanted.
Okay, so that's meaning, well, 12/23, our next meeting is gonna be 12/28. Oh, I see, meaning put together your eligibility questions really in next week, by next week.
Yeah, because then we could discuss them at the 28th. I'll have them compiled, so that way I can get rid of any duplicates or, and then talk about them at the 28th and get them out to the proponents by the first of the year.
Okay, so first of all, I think that that's fine on some level, but it can be kind of a, I've always encouraged people to to submit additional questions. At least we have a discussion. That's an excellent question. Let's put that question before.
I will say I will not be compiling them on the 24th or the 25th. So if people need additional time, I'm not going to be doing any work on those days. So.
Okay, so we have a hand up. Joe wants.
Yeah, could Cecilia send out the standard due diligence questions, which may prompt thinking on our part to kind of add to them or tweak them? I think what Reg and Laura and I looked at and came up with would be very helpful. And I don't happen to have a copy of what we had sent forward. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I can send those draft questions tomorrow.
Great.
So I think that's a great idea. And I don't think you should let the process overwhelm you. So if you say, ask 3 questions that I think really need to be answered and kind of build on that, that may be the way that you don't feel overwhelmed by the task in front of you. Okay, Bob Dermott.
Thank you. Yeah, quick question, Mr. Chair. And if I may address Cecilia with this, in the past, they've applied, they're waiting here if they're eligible. When we tell them they're eligible, have we always done that at the same time with questions, or is this something new? Do we do 2 communications with them? You're eligible, stay tuned for the questions. How's that gonna work?
This is kind of new.
Okay.
I can't remember what I did
No,
last year.
it's new. We're trying to get some, we're a little bit of a working process,
Yeah.
but over the last 2.
Well, it
funding
informs how
cycles-
we're gonna do our work, I think.
Let me check one thing as you guys talk.
All right. I don't really have a preference or a suggestion, otherwise just more of a curiosity.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Reg.
yeah, so I'm gonna consult with my co-collaborators, Joe and Laura, from doing the updated, more detailed application questions. But my recollection is that there is a section, there's a whole set of standard questions over 5 or 6 sections, but there is a section, I think it was 5 or 6, into which, and we tried to do this last year, we dropped not just the additional eligibility questions we discussed earlier, but also any additional more detailed questions that we would like to have addressed. By way of example, Laura said, I'd really like to see some overall timeframes and for each of these projects and so forth. That really doesn't have anything to do with the, eligibility, but it has everything to do with the review of the presentations that are going to be done in January and February, making sure that the committee has those questions answered, not just the standard set of questions, but any project specific or application specific questions that committee members would like to have addressed.
Yeah, okay.
And give those questions need to go into Cecilia by some date, like December 23rd, like within a week. Cecilia needs to compile them after the holiday break and include that in the overall, more detailed questionnaire that goes out in early January to the proponent, to the applicants.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Reg. I have a couple things to add to that, but Cecilia has her hand up. So let's,
And I will say, so the application instructions say that we are only determining eligibility by January 1 and getting back to the proponents And then it does say that they'll be required to provide additional information by February 1st, but it does not say when we ask, because I think in the past, we've kind of kept asking for more information through that process.
Okay,
So we can do either way.
Thank you, that's helpful.
all right, good, that's helpful. All right, so now, all right, yes, Dave,
So we voted on at least 3 of them
yes,
and deemed them eligible.
yes.
So there's no reason why we can't notify the proponents that.
No, there's no reason, no.
Yeah,
no.
I can
Because they get,
notify
They
them.
need all the time they can get to start.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
what questions will be
All right, so
coming?
let's, but to, all right, so this, I'm gonna respond to both. Joe Barnes' request, Reg's education of us, what those forms look like. So it is important for us to get those forms, you know,
Yeah.
and so we can build on those. And then I was reminded of something else, which is, what I think you want to do really is if you're any limited in time, you know, the A+ effort is to look at all 4 and answer some due diligence questions, have due diligence questions for all of them. But what I would really do is just focus, really the, you know, A-, you know, is just turn to your application, and look at it, look at the standard requests, and then see if there's some additional questions that you want to add as part of your due diligence. You know, so I would say really focus on the application where you are the liaison. Focus your efforts there, because you have a shortened time period. And that it's probably better to do a good job on 1 than an okay job on 4. Okay. And I think that would help. Okay, because really, we just need 1 person to do a good job on each one. And so that's all we need.
Set the bar low.
No, it's just
I'm kidding,
true.
yeah.
It's, you know,
Yep.
we are all experienced at this, and we're all
Yep.
thoughtful people. So, you know, it's, you
We've been
know,
asking these questions for a while.
right? Okay, so I would say focus your efforts on
Yeah.
the applications where you're the liaison.
I'm glad you said that, because I was sitting here saying, oh, no. When you said, you know, DeFazio, I said, oh, yeah, that little playground, that'd be fun to work on. But then I heard the time frame. This is the Christmas holiday season, and my God, I'm the matriarch of a family of 30. I mean, how am I gonna do all this? I really am serious.
lucky.
I can't do anything until well into January.
Okay,
I'm very sorry, I just can't.
sorry, so we supplemented our questions in the past. There are other people who you're working with. Oh, you got Rich Foster.
Yeah.
And then, you
yeah.
know what, don't worry, you know
I
what,
mean,
I'll
if it's
take
just a
us.
matter of the questions being sent out and without, like, I remember I was doing Cricket Field last year, and I went out and I visited the field and I come up with questions, and I really took the project seriously, and then they withdrew it. And so I figured, well, yeah, that's what I have to do, and, you know, I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
And point of order, we send them to Cecilia?
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
she, do not send the, you know, what we want to do in order to comply with the, you know, our open meeting law requirements, we want to channel all communications.
Just,
Don't hit
The-
reply.
well,
The
I
other-
don't mind getting the questions and looking at them and then thinking, do we need to ask more? That's like an hour's worth of work. I can do that, but much more than that, I know I can't do. And I just want to make that clear.
That's A-okay.
Okay,
Yeah, that's okay.
all right.
Seriously. You know what, okay, okay.
And I will say, as long as everyone here is okay with it, I will notify all the applicants that their applications were determined eligible by the end of this week, and then,
Except 1.
Yeah, all these that are, yeah, and let's get to proceed too on the.
We
Yeah.
tabled 1.
Yeah.
Right?
I thought we
maybe I
didn't table
misread.
any of them.
Nope, we tabled, yes,
We tabled seabeds, I thought.
yeah, we deferred CBEDS.
Mr. Chair, just again, Cecilia said she would send out the standard due diligence questions over the next day or 2.
Tomorrow,
Great, thank you.
I'll let CBEDS know that we're still determining
And we
eligibility.
wanted to get Chris Heath, we gotta get him in the, you know, we have
Yeah.
to go back to him and say this has got to be addressed.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
But I will say, with regards to the questions, due diligence questions going out to the proponents, there, it will most likely be January 2nd or 3rd, not the 1st, because between the 28th and the 1st, I will be driving cross country. So I don't want to
Okay.
commit myself to.
First is a Sunday, by the way.
Yeah, I also have a wedding on the 31st, so,
We'll take care of that. Best
but
wishes.
I don't think anyone's gonna be checking their email on the 1st to get these questions, so.
It's New
So there's
Year's
some
Day.
time. So
Yeah.
we have some time, okay, or yes,
Question, please, Mr. Chair. The one we've tabled, I believe we've tabled it because we desire more information.
Mhm.
How do we acquire that more information?
so, what we've done is, well, it's both a legal opinion and a request for additional information.
Yeah, the request more from us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that the proponent has already heard that request, so we'll fine tune that, we'll have our staff.
I'm just trying to
direct email.
separate that little request versus formal due diligence
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's, Sue's got a job to do on that, which is,
Mhm.
she needs to talk to her counsel, make sure he understands the issue, and she needs to make the request for additional information to the proponent.
Super,
Okay,
thank you.
good, that's a great question and a good point. Okay, so so now the next question is, do we need to meet and should we meet on the 28th? Seems to me that we may be, well, I guess it's possible that we'll have some answer for the housing authority, but that's only in 2 weeks. Otherwise, the next meeting date is when, Cecilia? I don't know.
January 11th. I have.
Yep, January 11th.
1/11. It may be that we want to skip our 28th meeting and go to 1/11.
Mhm.
By then, we should have some
Yeah,
clear information on the Seabeds Way project. Gives our council some time around the holidays to actually give it some thoughtful review and interaction, in fact, perhaps with the proponent. So that will be, I think that's my proposal, but I'm open to discussion on that.
I'll second the motion.
Oh, we don't really, I don't know that we need a second, and I just want to just say, if that, you agree with that idea? We don't meet
I
on the
agree.
28th.
for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I endorse it.
Okay, endorses, yeah, I get
Endorse
it.
it.
Okay, so, anyone disagree with it? No disagreement. Okay, so then the 28th is canceled and we're on for the 11th. And just bear in mind the interim date, which is the 23rd, but continuing on for the week after that. And Jean gets a pass, because she's got 30 other things to do and deal with. Okay,
Very lucky.
lucky her, is what I said. All right, now, are there any, last point, sorry, let's just go through this quickly, I apologize. Getting a little late here, but recording secretary update, staff, Cecilia. can you give us an
Yes.
update?
So Kristen Wright has stepped down from the recording secretary after much thought. And so I have worked with the town manager's office to get somebody who will be catching us up on some of the old minutes remotely. They work 100% remote. They take the minute, they will look at our recorded videos, take the minutes, send them to us. I'm working on the timeline for that currently, and then they will also be, as of right now, taking our minutes until we get a more permanent recording secretary.
Okay, so we got a lot of work, I mean, we really need to get caught up.
Yeah.
You know, it's just becoming apparent to me, it's a handicap for me, actually, because I would love to have the minutes. So that I know exactly what we discussed and what were the open issues. Instead, I'm working with my own hand scribbled notes and going back to other committee members and asking if they remember things. So just want to make sure that that's a high priority with the, the executive staff.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's see.
Could we remove the screen share?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right, so let's see. Then next up is does anyone have any questions regarding that update? No, thank you for your, all right, thanks. Cecilia. Okay. CPC project funding recognition, Cecilia, that's also on your.
Yeah, so we're working on the plaque for the town common renovation project right now and going through some draft language. It'll have certain people's names, and then there was a line with special thanks to CPC. And I know that we had talked about having the word funding or funded by on that line. So I wanted to get, if we had any thoughts on that, what everyone's thoughts were, if we wanted that adjusted to funded, or if we were fine with just the recognition for special thought. Thanks.
Is that what it says right now? What does it read now?
I
Is
thought it
there a
was-
sign on the front?
Yes, it's on the town common.
This will
and-
be a permanent sign?
Well, this is, we're working on a permanent sign for what we're gonna, the plaques, et cetera.
Ultimately, I think we've been asking for this for all projects.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
For the big one.
It's not, the language isn't finalized yet, which is why I wanted to jump in on here.
No, I wondered what was on our front, what's on the banner on the.
Outside right now?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
for town hall?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
that's,
On the fence.
Consistent with that one?
You mean on the fence right now?
yeah, we have a banner there that
Yeah.
says,
Oh, I got a picture of it.
okay, there's a banner there.
Joe, didn't you have a picture or something of somebody's sign that said this project or this thing was funded through
Sure, I
CPA?
had a
Yeah,
picture, yes.
I sent it
had
to
a
Peter.
picture.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Then I
It-
forwarded it to the executive.
I take them everywhere I
And
go,
then-
Rick.
And then actually, what happened was, well, I'll tell you what happened with respect to, if you, sorry, I'll tell you this, but with respect to the banner on the chain link fence around the town green, I got a call on a Friday afternoon from Kate Fitzpatrick, and she said, we're gonna have the banner say X, what do you think of it? And it was very similar to the language that we had discussed, similar to the sign. I think I will tell you, I tweaked the language a little bit, and I said, I like it. And so this was my language. It says, this project was supported by the citizens of Needham through the Community Preservation Fund.
I love that.
Yeah, is that similar to what they have in Wellesley, Peter?
Similar, but I don't care what they have.
Yeah.
No, but that's what prompted us
Oh,
our thinking.
absolutely. No, what happened was, for those of you who are new here, this is Joe took a picture and said, hey, look at this in Wellesley. And this has been a 3 or 4 year campaign by Joe to just get a simple sign put up at all these places. But this was the language that I
And I
like.
come up the day
I
the
like
trees
it.
came down.
I said, it's just our luck that
But
we put
Peter?
that banner there
Our
under
first one
that
ever.
project. Yes, yes.
But
thank you.
Peter, that sounds like it's from some sort of over, some state funding, some other funding source. I feel like it would be great to, hone in on the fact that the town's CPC committee was integral in getting the funds to support the project.
I like the part that he acknowledges that it's the citizens' money, we're just the stewards.
Yeah.
I think,
Also,
Yeah.
What if we put in there, Laura, this project was supported by the citizens of Needham through the Needham Community Preservation Fund?
Yeah, I think we should. We should get credit.
Is that okay?
that's fine with me.
Fine with me.
Or it could be through Needham's Community Preservation Fund.
Needham's Community Preservation Committee.
No, I
Well,
don't- No,
You want to say fund?
yeah, we don't need any recognition.
I don't want.
No, but
anyone-
we should, because people do not,
No,
I'm
we're
telling
just
you.
doing, well, we're just doing the work. The money is important because the
No, I
citizens are
understand
paying
that,
it.
but people don't understand, regular citizens, regular people, all of us. They don't understand what people who are on these committees do. They have no idea. Seriously.
I'm
not-
sorry. All right, but all right. But I think it's important to let people know that their local dollars.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's
so-
what I
Could it
I
be
agree.
just a little shorter by
Okay.
saying citizens of, this was supported by the citizens of Needham through its community preservation fund? Just making it a little shorter? Do we need to say
Yeah.
Needham twice?
That's good.
Yeah, although,
It is shorter, but I don't like it's on a sign.
because it's may
Okay.
refer to either citizens or Needham. It's a little confusing.
Citizens is there, Needham is its. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
right.
Yeah, good point, Gene. Darn it.
How about through this, something like saying through the support of the citizens, residents, whatever. Something like that of Needham. Just so people feel like they're getting acknowledged for the support, the town meeting members, whatever.
Your money.
This project was. All right, here's what we're gonna do. It's 9:30. Everybody, let's send this, Bob, let's send this out to everyone. And you can work as this and you can tweak the language. And the chair is gonna exercise discretion. Okay, is
Send
that
it back
okay?
to
I don't mean
Cecilia?
blip. Or-
Yeah, send it back to me.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. It's late.
Okay,
Okay,
To you, does, like,
DPW, so the town engineer and Ed Olson and stuff, they're working on it and they ran it by me and I said, hold on, let me,
Kate involved?
yes, Kate's involved.
All right, so send that to Cecilia. She'll send it out and with
You know
instructions
what
to
that
tweak
says,
it.
right? Do you want me to send that to you?
Can you send it to me? I have to take a picture of it.
Okay, good. All right, good.
okay.
Okay, so you'll get that and play around with that. And get back to Cecilia. Okay, any other issues? Anything? Riggs and Bone? Nothing?
I'll make a
Alright.
motion to adjourn.
Okay, so let's have a roll call vote.
Chris Gerstle's not here anymore.
Discussion, hearing none, let's have a vote. Joe Barnes.
yes.
Or Bob Dermody.
Hi.
Laura Dorfman.
Yes.
Rich Foster.
Yes.
Dave Harrod.
Yes.
Gene McKnight.
Yes.
Riggs and Bone.
Yes.
Feel better, Reg.
Okay, feel better, Reg.
Good luck,
And,
Reg.
Thank you.
Hey,
Good night,
listen,
everybody.
everybody, have a great holiday.
Yeah,
You
thanks to
too.
all of you.
Be in
Yeah.
touch. Have you seen the church progress?
Yes.